Oh, there's lots of questions as well there.
These are people saying hello.
Well, that's really nice, actually, isn't it?
Oh, we're live. Gareth,
Aha!
so we are live. There we are. Two
Okay.
middle-aged men trying to work out how to use a computer while reading messages.
Right. Should we just assume there's people out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody tell us we're here and we're live. Who's not curious?
He's not curious yet. All right. Okay. For you all out there, welcome. Thank you for coming. I am Henderson Mullin, Chief Executive of Writing East Midlands, which is as it sounds, and I'm here speaking with Jamie Mullart on the auspicious occasion of the launching of his second novel. Here's one I prepared earlier. Here's one which follows this one.
It does. You know, it's like stacking them up in the background.
Indeed. Oh, right. Okay.
Plugs.
Yeah. Kings of a Dead World.
Yeah.
Which is a brilliant book and a brilliant second novel, which we're going to talk about tonight. Let's start from the beginning, and that's the obvious, Jamie.
Yeah, go on then.
Avoiding spoilers.
Yeah.
What's it about?
So Kings of the Dead World is set in near future, sort of unspecified near future. Really, it could be anywhere between 50 and 100 years. Really, it's not super futuristic near future, but climate change has had a massively detrimental effect on the earth, and the government have been forced to make a decision about how to deal with it, and the collective decision in the whole world is a solution called the sleep, which is where the vast majority of people get put to sleep into sort of enforced hibernation for 3 months, and then they wake for 1 month. And over each of these populations, there's one person called a janitor whose job is to sort of look after them, ostensibly. And it follows, there's 3 storylines, one of which is a guy called Peruzzi, who's the janitor. One who follows Ben and his wife Rose, who are sleepers, and a flashback story which talks about how we got in this situation, basically, in a nutshell.
Fantastic. I mean, what struck me with this was there are so many things. You've got the sustainability and the paucity of resources. There's stuff about power in there. There's stuff about prestige in there and how society works and who gets valued and who doesn't. There's stuff about social responsibility, and there is revolution, and at the heart of it is something we'll talk about later, I'm sure, which is a lovely love story. There's even stuff around male relationships in there. So lots and lots of things. Lots of things. What struck me was how many things were in there and how you handled it coherently. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about the process?
So it took me a long time to write. It was about 5 years really. But during that 5-year period, we had our first daughter. So I'm excluding 2 of those years at least. As anyone who's got young children realise, that's just like a black hole period where you can't do anything. And it's I wrote. So the book is about 100,000 words, I think, but I actually wrote a much it was a much longer book. I cut out about 100. It was over 200,000 words, which is enormous by anyone's standards. And I think that's probably what enabled me to get so much depth into it, because I built not just the world that you can see, but everything around it. Like, I really knew all of the characters really well, and it's sort of that being able to play out over a much bigger palette meant that when I trimmed things back, there was enough depth in there, if that makes sense. But I think I think everything in there comes back to sort of the main thing. I think is about culpability and personal responsibility. So like the responsibility of the individual in their actions, in the way they treat other people, in their relationships, in their relationship with the world, and that's male and female. You did touch on this. As everything I write comes back eventually to toxic masculinity in some way or another. And I don't know whether that's deeply psychological, but the Zoo did, and the next book I wrote did. And I always sort of, most of my writing revolves around some sort of social commentary. like something that's bothering me about the world at the moment, and then sort of spirals out from there. And the themes you mentioned all sort of connect, I think, to that, and then spiral outwards.
It's really interesting how I mean, we'll get back to the relationship with your first book in a minute, but I'm really always interested in genesis of novels, genesis of stories, and starting at the back of the book, there's this beautiful acknowledgement. I don't know, people who have read the book, flip to the acknowledgement section, and it's lovely, and it's about your relationship with Sam, with your wife. But what made me smile is that you said that you had the idea when you proposed to her. So
yeah.
talk to us about how you got from a proposal to a sort of apocalyptic novel.
I hadn't thought of it like that, but yes, that's what happened. We'd gone to Hamilton Hall, which is a beautiful restaurant. We stayed over. Probably had too much champagne to drink because she'd said yes. And then I woke up in the morning with the idea of the sleep and the trade, which is how the janitors trade the resources to gain creds, which is the money of the world. Pretty much fully formed. And actually, there was one bit. I don't want to. It's actually really spoily if I tell you this, and you'll know what I'll say when Slattery comes to the apartment. The only time that scene was almost fully formed in my head, and then I've extrapolated out from it. But how naff is it? Coming up with an idea for a book in a dream?
Yeah, I know.
Seriously.
It did really make me smile. Actually, I thought that was a cracker. Okay,
but it is about sleeping, isn't it? So maybe it's appropriate.
Yeah, I totally get that. And yeah, I totally get how that would happen. And the resources thing. I'll tell you what, this is a good place to start. I think. Do you want to do your first reading, and just to give people a flavour of the book?
Yes, I'll read from the start. So just do a couple of minutes from the start. So this is Ben, from Ben's point of view. It's Ben, April, city status, awake. It's the same every time I wake up. Slowly, consciousness comes back to me. I'm aware of the tranks receding with the cold, slow iciness of a glacier. This snippet of time is a moment for dreams. The only time for dreams. The sleep is black and empty. I dream of a holiday long ago, of an island resort somewhere in Southeast Asia. Time has robbed me of the specifics, Bali or Vietnam or Malaysia. An embracing sky, a ruff of jungle around a lagoon, mountains insinuating themselves through a morning heat haze. The splayed feet and squat bodies of the geckos as they shimmy up walls. The endless march of ants across white stone, marking the minutes and hours in their passes. The give of wet sand under the weight of my feet. For a moment, I forget everything, and there is only the dream. I forget who I am, where I am, what is happening, and I experience something like peace. It might only be a minute, it might only be 30 seconds, it could easily be less, but I am peaceful. Then slowly, reality insinuates itself, as it always must, and I remember who I am, where I am, and what is happening. Rise and shine. The soft, synthetic voice of Rip Van is summoning me back. I try to hold him at bay, to stay in the dream, to stay with my feet on the beach, but it's pointless. Rise and shine. The hammering of the tranks leaving my system begin to trample all over the inside of my head, and I'm too scared to open my eyes in case the inevitable bright light makes it worse. As soon as I open my eyes, I'm admitting reality, and that is irreversible. I am an old man lying in a pod. I open my eyes. The ceiling fan turns above me in a steady whir, a fly tossed in the wake of its breeze. Seems so gentle. I look down at my naked body. Is it my imagination, or does it actually look older? Feeling creeps back into my legs. It's always like this. It's designed this way so as to ease you back into the world. The shock can kill you otherwise. But I know I'm only on the surface of things, and any minute now I'm going to look to my right, and the race will begin. I pause for as long as I can. I focus on the fly being buffeted in the invisible wake of the fan. I let my eyes close again. I concentrate on the feeling as warm blood fills various parts of my bodies, my arms, my hands, my fingers, down into my thighs, shins, feet, toes. And I say a silent prayer to Kronos, count down 3, 2, 1, open my eyes again and turn to the side. The real countdown begins. I see my wife in profile, and for a millisecond, everything is as it always was. Her face is timeless and beautiful, the cruel hand of age not visible on her. Her eyes are open, and she turns her head slightly to me. I see the smile in her eyes. Then the diagnostic barrel begins to move. Stay still, beautiful, stay still, I say, trying to keep the panic from my voice. She doesn't or can't heed me. Confusion is written across her face. The diagnostic bar has passed over her body hundreds of times, and yet here now, she doesn't recognize it. It's alien and violent. What else could she do but fight it? She tries to sit up. I concentrate on keeping my breathing and heart rate level and even. I'm no help to her if I shut down as well. Rose, darling, keep still for a minute. It won't hurt you. She looks at me, and I see a blankness in her eyes that means she can't place me, that I don't fit into understanding of the world as it is now. I wonder where she is, which version of Rose she is now, and I realise she must be young enough to not really know me. A little bit of my heart snaps off. I love her and always will. The young flighty girl, the old woman she is now, and everything in between. And right now, she isn't sure who I am. I swallow my hurt. It doesn't do anything for either good. The only thing I can do for her right now is to stop her panicking and stop her being put back to sleep. Rose, please, stay, my love, stay still. It will be over before you know it. She mutely shakes her head, and I know what's going to happen before it does. I've seen it so many times before with more and more regularity. She snatches at the electrodes that are attached to the side of her head and yanks them free, staring at them in her palm. They're as unknown as the tube and diagnostic bar to her. She simply doesn't understand what is happening. I make a shushing noise, attempt to calm her, but also to keep myself calm. I still don't know what the cutoff point is. What is the limit they'll tolerate? Despite the amount of times we've been through this, I can't say what heart rate triggers the tranks. She sits bolt upright. The barrel bounces off her back as it attempts to pass. She looks down at her naked body, and I know what she sees. An old woman, whereas her mind is hidden in the youth of her past. Her mouth opens in a horrified O, and she begins to scream. It can only last a few seconds, as it always does, but it cuts through me and continues long enough to terrorize me. I will never get used to this. I never want to get used to this. Then the light literally goes off in her eyes.
Fantastic, thank you. So we have there the opening scene of Ben and Rose, who are two of the central characters, and their relationship stands in many ways at the core of the novel. But the love for each other, where all this chaos is going on around them, that love stays true. And how did you come to those two?
I think it's. It does. I do this in the zoo as well, and I'm doing it again in my next book, because I always try and put my writing is quite harsh and quite dark, often violent. But I always try and put like a tender human core to it, because I think you can put as much action and as much excitement and as much violence and swearing and all the other stuff in it as you want, which will take people along with them on like a superficial roller coaster ride. But it's human interest that actually is what storytelling is about. You know, it's people that drive stories. Otherwise you're making a Michael Bay film, and I don't want to make a Michael Bay film. I want to write a book about people and relationships.
Yeah, I think it's what you did this in your first novel with the zoo, as well, and at the centre of that there was their character Marlowe, and the development of his relationship with his wife and the breakdown thereof was central to it. And I think it takes a certain confidence, doesn't it? I feel, when you're dealing with great big themes, to boil them down to the level of a little relationship and two people in a room and what's happening to them. And that is I would say that is definitely part of your writing. What I did notice is how much more confident you were with it.
Okay, cool.
I'll take that. The original. How did you feel that confidence in you in emerging? It might have so. Emerging writers, I suppose. I'm digging at.
I think so. There's always something. So as you know, my first novel is not my first novel. You're one of the few people who's read the one before it, and the one that nearly was, effectively. And you're on this journey anyway, aren't you? It's like, I think I've written 4 novels before the zoo got published, there or thereabouts. You know. And then you get that book published, and for when you're an unpublished author, like getting that first novel published is everything. Like it's almost as if that's the end point, and it's not. Like it should. It's the start of things, and it gives you a chance to learn your craft. When you're writing anything, the only way you can truly appreciate it is to step back and have another look at it. And I think the beauty of having a book published is it goes out to the world and people have opinions on it, and you talk to people about it, and you get a much better chance to sort of delve into what worked, what didn't work, and how people respond to things. And then because it took me a long time to write Kings of a Dead World, I really just sort of really got into the craft of it. I really got into the writing. It was a real like as you talked about the structure and things. I just really enjoyed the building of. I enjoyed and found it challenging. Actually, there's certainly the second difficult album syndrome about it of going big, like, and then having to pull it back. But it gave me. I felt because it's almost like if your first novel gets published, someone's saying to you, "Yep, that's it. You can write. You have the ability to write a full book, and it's good enough to get published." And that takes some pressure off, I think, to a degree, and enables you to sort of go and try stuff, which is what I did.
Yeah. I mean, it really does come through the confidence and voice. It's like it really hits it. You mentioned structure. Again, this is interesting to me. In the first book, you had a dual, let's call it a dual timeline running. You had well, in fact, there were three. There was the real world. There was a world where inside the hospital where Marlowe was, and then there's what's going on inside his head and his interior voice. In this one, you've also got two distinct timelines, and you've got the backstory going on at the same time. And you give lots of hints, I guess, as to where we are and help us to it's before, and then it's awake. The premise is that the city is asleep at some point, and then it's awake. Tell us about that. Tell us why you chose that structure and how you negotiated, I guess, because it's quite a difficult thing to do.
It's actually more complicated than that as well, because the two because of the 3 months sleep and 1 month awake, while it looks like you're just going asleep awake, one of them is running much slower than the other one. So if you actually really if you carefully study it, this one has to catch up with the other one, which was I didn't realize that I'd set myself that problem until I sort of got towards the end and went, oh shit. So then I had to and Kay, my editor, was amazing at helping with just honing that, like just getting that really tight. But I planned the whole thing quite extensively, and in a typical boy geek fashion, I had a spreadsheet. Yeah. Well, I had a big Excel spreadsheet, and I had dates across the top. I had plot points down the left, and I'd coloured in sort of who was awake and who was asleep at any one particular time, so I could, because there's things that happen in both storylines. But I really enjoyed that. I think I love playing with structure, and it was actually so I think Priya's on here as well. But I've actually, the writing course that I taught for you guys, where I really talked about structure, and there's a thing that really interests me. So this is actually three-act structures fit together into one 3-act structure. So the whole book follows the classic 3-act structure, but each one of the individual stories also follows the classic 3-act structure, which was just like geeky fun, to be honest.
No, I mean, I was really impressed with how you did that, because it wasn't an easy thing to do. And I did notice that acceleration at the end of the book where the two timelines are coalescing and catching up. I thought it was really skillfully done. And I thought to myself, I mean, I was kind of looking for holes, and I couldn't find. And I couldn't find them.
Somebody will.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it comes to all that, but I didn't see it. I've been through it twice, and so I think that's really, really, really well done. What it reminded me of the book, I think I said to you a little while ago, or in a notes, is I've read quite a bit of this stuff in the past, and it did place you for me with Ballard, J.G. Ballard.
That's a wonderful thing to say. But like,
Well,
he is
you better
the god
take
of
it.
British sci-fi, isn't he? I'm not going. Yeah, I'll take it, but I think you're wrong.
There's a few others as well that I thought it sits with, and I think I mentioned it to you before. Burgess, Anthony Burgess. I thought pretty much there's a wicked writer I know of, and I don't know anybody that's read this book, Albion by Reginald Hill. He had a pseudonym, Dick Morland. It's about the breakdown of England. This is all around football culture, and what happens when hierarchies break down, when traditional structures break down, when families break down, and there's two lovers who live it. It's a wicked
Very
book.
similar to where I'm going next, actually. My
Is
next
it
book
really?
is toxic masculinity
Yes.
about the rise of the right in the start to in the run up to Brexit, about football, tribalism, and all that mixed together. Yeah.
Have a look at it. I've got it somewhere. I don't know if you can still buy this book. I'll give it to you. But it's it might store your stuff. But what I'm getting at though is I see you in a tradition there of what was called new wave sci-fi with this book. Do you see yourself? Where would you place yourself in the sort of pantheon of British writers now? I mean, it's even Orwell and Huxley in here. This is all about what happens when society goes wrong.
So I think this book is overtly science fiction. The Zoo wasn't, but it was speculative. And the next book is much more sort of gritty again. But I was like, I'm not going to write a sci-fi book next, but I had a cracking idea for a sci-fi book last night. Which, even if I do say so myself. So I don't know. In terms of pantheons of British writers, I think I write all sorts of different things. I think so. If I was going to say, I'm again, I'm never nowhere near in his league, but the ability of Peter Carey's ability to jump genres is kind of what interests me. Like I've got lots of things that I'm sort of toying with at the moment. One of which is a genre horror piece, but I kind of like dipping into genres and then doing my own thing on it, which is probably making them a bit darker and more twisted than they were, and then going to another one. So I've actually got in my head at the moment sort of a very gritty sort of like the book about toxic masculinity and football and nationalism. I've got a young author Victorian, a young adult Victorian novel set in Leicester, which is bubbling away.
Oh, okay.
I've got a horror novel, which is sort of bubbling away, and I've now got another sci-fi novel, which might take precedence actually, because I got quite excited about it yesterday.
So it's going to be I know you're two published in, so it's about the story, and then that will lead itself to the genre, whereas rather than placing yourself in a particular tradition.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
it's genre fluid.
Genre fluid. Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay.
You just made that up. Is that you going to claim that, or is that?
I am going to claim that. I thought that was quite witty, man.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Let us just roll back into the book itself. In your reading, you mentioned some really interesting things going on there, and you mentioned Rip Van Winkle, Rip Van. You mentioned Kronos. Struck me that you were riffing off quite a lot of mythology, the Persephone myth of half alive, half asleep, underworld, and half in the real world or awake. Struck me as being there. So there's a lot of lovely things going on. Do you want to just talk about that and about that bit of world building you did in the religion that you kind of imagined?
One thing that just interests me in life, really, as opposed to this book, is the way in which beliefs are layered on top of each other and borrow something else. So you've got like churches over Roman temple sites, so on, and then. But it occurred to me that if there was like a catastrophic reset, which is effectively what the sleep is, where you just go, right, that's everything now from this moment on is different. That would probably shake Orthodox religion to its foundations. I can't see how anyone, if you live in a world where the world is is that fuck? Oh, sorry, my mum's on this.
Your mum is watching, isn't she? I bet.
Yeah, yes, probably. It's in that much of a mess that you've got to reset effectively. Then just cannot see how any normal religious structure would survive that. So I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about what would people do, and I thought they'd probably revert back to something very primal, very mythical.
Yeah, I like
because
that.
Myths and fairy tales are still they're like how we tell stories, aren't they, to ourselves? They're how we cope with things, which is kind of what dystopian fiction is as well, isn't it? It's a construct to cope with what you're faced with at a particular moment in time. And fairy tales and mythology sort of drill right down into very sort of like very primal fears that we have. So it occurred to me that if you reset something, you'd probably revert back to something that is less complicated and less, rather than stacking, it would reset with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I thought it was really cleverly done, that. I think world building is really important, and I think you did that really well with that. There were some nice coincidences though. Do you know the Rip Van story with Rip Van Winkle? He goes to sleep, doesn't he?
Yeah.
For I don't know, 20 years or whatever it is, and misses the American Revolution. Wakes up and goes, "Oh, the world's changed. It's really terrible, and I don't know what's going on." Is that's
which is clear, you can clearly see the connection, can't you? And why
absolutely, but there's another connection to it, because that short story, is written in Birmingham.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I know. I was like, really, I was going, do you know? That's amazing.
I wish I'm going to say I did, and I didn't actually, because it's. I mean, so you picked up the novel was set in Birmingham then?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I'm a Brummie.
Of course you are.
You know, so it's kind of like, I mean, it moves from London. I mean, there's I don't know, this is a spoiler, Jamie, but there's an act of terrorism 2/3 the way through the book that happens in London, which I genuinely was like, no, you can't do that. And I did wonder at your head at that point, and or Andreas's head, shall we say?
Yeah.
And then they moved to Birmingham. So I did pick that up, and was really interested in how you play Zoo in Leicester, and then your second novel is largely in Birmingham. So you are locating yourself as a Midlands writer in quite an interesting way.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was a practical thing with Birmingham as well, because it needed to be somewhere in the centre of the city that was far enough away from the centre of the country that was far enough away from the coast, so when the waters did rise, it wouldn't have been affected. And trying not to spoil it again, but obviously the story set in the sleeping world is further in the future, so the waters have risen more, so it couldn't be. You know, it had to be this part of the world, and I think
gotcha.
The janitor's compound is the Birmingham Library.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people pick it up. It's just I thought it was quite cool.
I did. I liked it a lot, actually. Being sort of parochial,
it's such an iconic building, isn't it? And I kind of liked the idea of the man who was looking over everybody, who is incredibly superficial, but has got so much time, but does not. He could learn everything about the world in that building, and he's got no interest in it. Like,
he's got no interest. He just wanders around.
Yeah, and weightlifts
and drinks.
So I just kind of liked the idea of being in the centre of the country, in a place of an iconic building with all of that learning, and it just being utterly irrelevant to him.
Here's an interesting question that's popped up from Tony and Penny. Looking at the side part, says, Jamie, do you find all the ideas you have cross into each other from book to book?
Yeah, there's certain preoccupations that I have, and I think most writers do this, don't they? I think that just follow them wherever they go and whatever they write. And it's it always comes back to family for me in some way. It always comes back to toxic my relationships. It always comes back to responsibility. And these are things that I don't know why, but they really interest me. And I just keep coming back to them from different angles.
Cool. You just mentioned toxic masculinity, so I've been saving an awkward question for you, and Oh, you can have it now,
Go
really.
on then.
It struck me. I didn't notice first time round, but the second time, it struck me that the powerful characters, the main voices are um, Peruzzi, obviously
Yep.
male. Slattery, obviously
Yep.
male. Ben,
Yep.
obviously male. Rose hardly speaks. Ripley, who we'll talk about in a minute, because I thought she was a really interesting character. Ripley is the artificial intelligence, so not a woman.
Yeah.
Kitty, who's got lines but not many. I'm grinding my heel into your forehead here. It's very male centric.
Yeah, and yet the only good character in the whole book is Rose.
Hey, you dug yourself out of that one very skillfully.
But I like to explore. So we are the shit half of the species, aren't we? And I like to explore that. And again, I did it in the zoo. The only good character is the girl that he meets in the asylum. And I think men have the ability to make better people by women, but probably not the other way around. So I think, just I find the male relationship really interesting, like the male friendship relationship really interesting, and
That's what I was going to get to. I was going to ask you specifically that is this the reason because you're focused on that male thing, that that dysfunction of male bonding basically, and how horrible we are.
Basically, yeah, and I think it's much more. I'm really drilling down into that in my next book in a real strong way. Just about, but in this, it's in Peruzzi and Slattery, isn't it? And it's in Andreas and Ben. There is that sort of like inability. They're close, but they're not close. They've got they egg each other on. Both pairs of friends, and their relationship is, both of them are toxic, aren't they? They would be, all of them would be better if they hadn't met each other.
Completely get it. Your second reading, that I think might be, is that around that point where Peruzzi and
Slattery
meet?
Yeah. Yes, it's when they know. I'm gonna read a bit about the right. I'm sorry, Mum. This has got bad language in it. But you're gonna read the book anyway, so may as well. But so just so you know, this to sort of give it a little bit of context. The sleepers sleep 3 months and they wake for a month. So the janitors look after them for those 3 months, which is the bit where they do the trade and they look after each other, and then at the end of that month, they have a thing called the right, which is basically where they all get together because they're spread out around the country. They're very lonely people, and then they get together and they just basically have one big lash up before the sleepers come back to wake back up again. And this is during the right, so it's the start of it. The right, the passage from one state to another, the release, the time for the janitors before the world gets handed over to the sleepers. Strobes and base, and they are all there, all of the janitors, one for each of the remaining 60 cities and maybe another 50 for the provinces, together in this room. Beautiful faces and beautiful bodies. He allows himself to be swallowed up by the mass, to become one of them, to be part of it. And all of the time he has spent on his own, he's battling with his desire to be part of them. And now here's this beat and these people. He goes right into the middle where Slattery is next to him, an arm around him, pulling him, and they're right in the middle of it all as the ceiling splits open and the great gold bull Bacchus is lowered down amongst them, the crowd parting around it as it kisses the floor, all of them clamouring to touch its cold metal skin. Bacchus lifts his metal head up and bellows, and as he does, his mouth opens and he spews thousands of pills up into the air and they fall on the crowd like snow. Peruzzi's grabbed a handful of them and he's seen Slattery do the same, and they're grinning at each other, and they've been here before, just like this. And he swallows one, then another, swallows them dry, feels them scratching their way down, warm in his throat, all the way down to his stomach where he can feel them dissolve. Bax's love is spreading through them, taking hold of him, as all around the walls of the room hatches open to reveal bottles of multicolored liquids. Slattery has hold of the back of his neck and is steering to the nearest, and they take glasses and hold them under a bottle of red liquid. All he wants is to be here with them all, and he dances. It's later, and they're in a booth. Slattery is stretched out, his winkle pickers on the table, leather soles coated with the dirt of the dance floor. His face is covered in a sheen, his eyes wide, his speech rapid, words rolling into each other. He's talking, and Peruzzi picks out groups of words and snippets. He's saying something like, "The Americans fucking loved our stuff this sleep. Fucking loved it. I've shifted so much." And then Peruzzi loses the words, looks out at the crowd still dancing around the bowl. Slattery is saying, "Those lazy fucks didn't even appreciate what we do for them. I bet they don't even think of us once as they sleep out there. Cushy, cushy life for them." Peruzzi goes to the hatch and pours 2 more drinks, bright green this time, burning with a blue flame, and takes them back to the table. He gives one to Slattery, who's still talking, who doesn't even seem to have noticed he'd gone anywhere, who grins up at him, takes the drink, tips his head back, opens his mouth, and pours the burning liquid into his mouth. The flames leaping out of his mouth, his whole mouth on fire before he snaps it shut. The flames hang there for a second in the air, then are gone, and he dances. They all dance. They are the beating heart of the country, and all across the world there are people just like them. He feels the kinship, not just in this room, not just for the Janus of England, but for the whole territory of the Domino Treaty, for every country that joined with them, for every country that refused to die with the earth, for every janitor who sacrificed himself around the whole goddamn world. He sees them all around him, threads of energy linking the whole world together, these lions, these fucking heroes, all about him, and he is proud, so proud of what he is, of what they all are, what they can do, these magnificent human beings, the pinnacle of it all, the top of the fucking pyramid, the top 1%, and he dances. Slattery's moved on, is asking something barely audible. He leans closer, cups his ear with his hand to indicate he can't hear. Slattery puts his mouth closer. As he talks, Peruzzi can feel the spit hit his earlobe. "Want to see something cool?" Peruzzi shrugs, mouths okay, and Slattery cocks his head at the corner of the room. "Meet me over there in 5 minutes." And with that, he too is swallowed up by the dancers. Peruzzi checks his watch, marks the time, and sips his drink. He can feel the tablet fading in him now, so reaches into his pocket, pulls out another, and swallows it, washes it down with the liquor, checks his Rolex. 4 minutes have passed. He watches the second hand sweep a full circle, then forces his way through the dancers on the floor to the place Slattery indicated. Slattery appears, taps him on the shoulder, mouths, "Follow me." He pulls aside a drape and slides into the gap. Peruzzi glances around the room, but no one is watching them, no one cares. So he slips into the space behind the curtain, through the open doorway there, and joins Slattery at the bottom of a metal staircase. He hears the door click shut behind him, and instantly the music just becomes a dull, repetitive whomp. "You ready for this?" Slattery asks, his face all boyish excitement, eyes just pupils. "I'm not sure what this is, but okay, yes. Good man. It's a bit of a climb," says Slattery, taking the first 3 steps as a leap. His shoes clang off the metal, and then he's off climbing, fluid and natural. As Peruzzi follows, the tablet starts to wrap itself around him, and he has to grip the railing to keep himself steady in the ascent. He focuses on the wall in front of him. Into the brick, someone has scratched, "In Xanadu de Kubla Khan, a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alf, the sacred river run, through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea." His breath is laboured and his skin prickling. He has to pause, take stock of himself. He looks down the flight of stairs, black metal in the shaft, crossing back and forth on itself to fill the space. He clears his throat and spits the phlegm back down the way they came, listening for a landing that never comes. "Just wait for this," says Slattery, pushing down on the latch of a door. "Just you fucking wait." They both step out into the world beyond the compound.
That's worth a clap, actually.
Well, thank you, mate.
God, I think your prose is really rich now. Again, it differs from the first book where you use shorter sentences. Now there's kind of like this kind of points sustained and quite poetic sections.
Oh, cool.
It's almost like, and I think somebody mentioned this earlier on. Eve Drayton Hill, hi Eve, thanks for this comment. "Congrats, Jamie, I love the book. I can feel a film emerging," and that was echoed by Paperback Mo. Yes, also echo the thoughts about a film, and that was something. Sandstone Press. Yes, reads like something needs to be adapted to the screen. I think there's a commercial driver there, but that's okay. But what I'm saying is that this, I had that impression as well when reading it, in the way that you've laid your sentences out and you've taken time. It feels very filmic in quality.
So it's always been a film in my head from the minute I started. It's always been a film. If I was going to talk about direct influences, it would be like 1970s sci-fi. You know, like Omega Man.
Look.
And very good, bravo. Oh, have you done that on purpose because of Ripley?
No, it's a complete coincidence. I swear to God. There's baked beans on it. The reference.
Yeah, very good.
Go on. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go on, and I'll get to that.
So like even and the reason I love Hiker's cover so much is because that just feels like the minute it came through, it's like she nailed that like 70s sci-fi feel, which is really what like the classic Planet of the Apes, the Omega Man, like that. There's a golden age of sci-fi there.
Absolutely, and I completely got that. Again, it's what I like. It's the stuff I like, you know. So
I think it's we're men of a certain age.
That stuff, and it's my teenage years, all of that. But it did strike me most powerful, if you get this reference, to
go on then.
To at some points, not in the way the film was, but just in some of the tensions you managed to get and some of the madness and the relationships. And I was interested in Ripley, who somebody said was your favorite character.
That's cool. Thanks. That's Big Fat Mo. Thank you, Mo.
That's Big Fat Mo. Yeah.
I like her too.
It made me think of the obvious ones. This one, Nostromo and Alien. That was the obvious one. I thought, hang on a minute, he's riffing off Ridley. Scott is an ad man himself, and he's Ripley. He was the woman who's the best of them. What a character! And but he swapped around and become the AI. Can you just talk us about it? It also reminded me of HAL. 2001: Space Odyssey.
I wanted that deliberate. That was deliberate. So I'm glad you saw that. I didn't want it to be. I wanted it to be HAL, and I wanted there to be a reference to Alien. Oh man, this is seriously geeky. I'm
with you.
There's so much geeky stuff in this book. Like the reason Slattery is called Slattery. I don't even know if I want to tell you this because it's so powerfully geeky. It's the actor who plays the character Roger Sterling in Mad Men. His surname is Slattery, and I wanted there to be a nod back to the zoo. So I named the character after one of the actors in Mad Men. So it was related to advertising.
I thought the zoo was going to be the Ridley Scott connection, but I didn't get. I didn't know.
No one's going to get that. No, that's seriously Easter egg, isn't it? But there is something that you were right, but not quite right because I didn't. What interests me though, you said the other day that Ripley he got by turning the D upside down to make Ripley. Which, if that's true, that's really cool.
No, that's what I think he did. I want to ask. Right. I want to ask him because I mean the similarity to the name is just too close.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. No, I did. And she's. So there's Bishop, isn't there? In Aliens.
Bishop. I got Bishop. Yeah. And our distrust is also Terminator, isn't it? There's our distrust for AI and machines and the taking over.
Yeah. Yeah, so I wanted to I didn't want the obvious thing would be to have some riff around Bishop. Like I toyed with sort of vicar names and stuff, but then I thought the interesting thing to do would be to switch it and have because Ripley is the character that you trust in that the only character you can trust in that film really.
Yeah.
So there's if anyone's seen Alien, that would put trust in that character. If you know what I mean, and because he puts his entire life is based around her, I wanted her to be utterly trustworthy. So I wanted to. So that's why Ripley.
Yes, gotcha, and we can't really talk more without spoiling.
No.
Doing a massive spoiler there. Oh look, I have the same Nostromo tea. Paul Bragg got the best taste. Logan Drun now. Absolutely. Barry Edwards. I saw. I got Logan Drun, Michael York, Jenny Agutter. I got that. Picked that out as well.
So Barry, I went to school with Barry, and we spent a lot of time watching sci-fi films together, so he will know.
Gotcha. And Omega Man as well. Yeah, fantastic references. There was also a couple of other funny ones. I don't know if these were intentional or if I imagined them. I thought there might have been a little bit of a nod at there's a MacGuffin in there. Um, I presume people know what a MacGuffin is. It's a device. It's a something which you think has little significance, but it does have a lot of significance. How can I say it without a spoiler?
Yeah,
Pulp
go on.
Fiction. There's an object in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, it's the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, isn't it? And it's the slate. Oh, I nearly spoiled Citizen Kane for anyone who's not seen, but Rosebud is in the MacGuffin.
Absolutely. Yes, and it had something to do with time, and that was
There's no way
deliberate.
you can't even talk about it without. But there is,
You're
yes.
giving it away. You're giving it away. So
yeah.
let's.
I love. I'd say again, that comes from my obsession with and again, Priya has been on my course. I went into things like the MacGuffin. I love stuff like I love things like that. That are just they apply an artificial constraint to a story, and yeah, I just find as a writer, I find it interesting. It gives you something to play with.
Yeah, fabulous. Okay, let's talk about something a bit darker. Okay, in fact, how can I do this? There is a underlying theme in the book which says something like, "Be careful what you wish for." I'll put it better in my notes somewhere.
You got to be careful how you answer this. It's what you put is a dark underlying theme, and you absolutely nailed it. Actually, by the way, so I'll read out what you said.
Underlying theme, yeah, go on.
People beware. Go on.
Yeah, people beware of what you give up or to who and why you would do it. That's my question. Because down that road, utilitarian fascism lies waiting. That I picked out as the main theme, which has a lot of resonance given our situation with COVID and the restriction of personal freedoms and movements. So what do you say to that? While you're answering that question, I'm going to go and get my charger.
I'm just going to talk to myself. Yeah. So, I mean, that is you're absolutely right, and you put it in one sentence, and it took me 100,000 words. But that happens twofold. I think the story from the past and the NSF, which are the terrorist or revolutionaries, depending on how you want to look at it, who believe that natural selection is important, and that if humans want to deselect themselves, which is effectively what we've been doing for the past 100 years since the industrial revolution, 200 years, then we should just be allowed to do it, and nature would thank us for it. And you kind of see, and the weird thing about it was while all of this was going on, and I was editing it during lockdown, and you could actually, it's like the whole thing with the sleep. I wanted to find a solution that would solve the problem in terms of allowing human beings to coexist with nature in a way where we didn't overpower it. Which is, I mean, if you're going to be coldly logical, the sleep would actually work. Like it would solve all of our problems. But like it would involve such a level of sacrifice, on a collective sacrifice, societal sacrifice, that I can't, like, when I was, it seemed insane when I was writing it. It was like, this will never happen. Like we can't do it. And yet some, to a degree, we have done it over the last year. Like, you know, we've stayed in our houses, and the canals in Venice are see-through again, and emissions are down for the first time since the Second World War. Like, it's patently obvious that we're the problem. Have I answered your question? I think I'm just sort of on a meandering rant.
I think that is you are answering the question, because I think it's I know you started this book 3, 4, 5 years ago, but it's incredibly timely. The zeitgeist, as we said, is bang on, because I think a lot of us are worried about the advances of technology, and taking increasing amounts of our personal autonomy away. A lot of us are thinking about what personal responsibilities and how that balances against the state and the state's powers and responsibilities on our behalf to keep us safe and secure and now healthy. And the way that affects our intimate relationships, and affects our personal psyche. So I think it is answering the question, and I think this book is oddly, weirdly timely. Actually,
During the editing process, it was freaking me out. Like honestly, how some of the it's like I was editing some of the sections when like Parisians walk around the empty streets, and then I'd go and have a walk up around my village, and no cars, birds coming back out again. I'm like, Jesus, this is all a bit too and the way in which we was it was like a sleep light, wasn't it? We shut our society down for a long period of time, and I think I said I wrote an article for the bookseller this week about this and about how fiction should serve some sort of purpose to remind people of the gains that we've made during COVID. And because what I can in my day job, what I can see is, all the days of clapping for the NHS are long gone. Like, and people are just like, I just want to go to, I gotta go to Portugal. Gotta go to Portugal. Like, it's like all of that. I'm never going on a plane again because it's terrible to the world, and I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to go vegan, and I'm going to recycle. Gotta go to Costa del Sol to sit on the seafront and have some chips. It's like you learn nothing. Come on.
Read, Jamie, read another letter. I need to get this cable. So
okay.
read. It's only professional here,
Yeah. So this is in the backstory, just explaining how the sleep came about, and it's the start of that when the unnamed narrator of this section and Andreas, who is the I'm going to go with terrorist leader. They've planned a protest. There's an announcement about what the solution is going to be. So this is where it starts. As we climbed over the barriers and stepped in between the queue of cars, the police who'd lined the road were slow to react. We sat down on the road and the cavalcade was forced to stop. We linked arms across the road and lay down on the tarmac. You pulled a sketch pad out from your trouser pocket, a pencil from another, and you began sketching there, lying on your back. Over my shoulder, I could hear Andreas shouting at you to capture it all, that this moment that was important, this was the start of something beautiful, telling you to write it all down and chronicle it, because this was where we'd start to make our stand. As we'd planned, our sympathizers unfurled banners and were beginning chants, simple words. If you are neutral in the face of injustice, you have taken the side of the oppressors. But ones that, like the images, would become iconic. Then they threw white roses all around us and over the bonnets of the ambassadorial cars, as we all planned, all peaceful. Then the car in front of us lurched back, just a little to start with, as if it was about to stall, then a second, much larger movement. I heard the noise, but had no idea what it was. If I concentrate now, it still sounds like someone dropping a watermelon on the floor, but it sickens me because now I know what it was. They say she was killed instantly, that the weight of the car crushed her skull and she would only have felt a millisecond of pressure, then she would be dead. But I will never be able to erase that sound from my memory. Her name was Frida. Time paused until I sat up and saw Andreas on his feet, saw him clamber onto the bonnet of the car and begin kicking it with the heel of his shoe. I rolled to my right and shielded your eyes from what was happening, from seeing Frida's corpse. I saw a man whose name was Paolo, and I later found out was her brother, jump up next to Andreas and began to hammer on the windscreen, howling in anguish. Saw the windows shatter, saw the police grabbing hold of Andreas and trying to pull him from the car, but he was strong with anger and the windows exploded inwards, and I could see the driver's face, white with shock, his eyes dark hollows in the interior of the car and his mouth wide open, and I can remember the redness of the inside of his mouth compared to the whiteness of his teeth. And then Paolo was through the gap left by the glass and had his hands around the man's throat. The police had pulled Andreas down to the ground by now and were holding him pinned against the floor with his arms ratcheted up behind his back, and instead were trying to get hold of Paolo's kicking legs. Guns don't sound like they do in films. I learnt that at this moment, and it would never go away. The sound they make is not in proportion to the damage they cause. Handguns make a pop rather than a bang. In the dark interior of the car, it sounded even more echoing and tinny. For a millisecond, the interior was lit up and I could see the outline of Paolo's head as the back of it came off. As he slumped into the car, realization passed over the driver's face. Paolo's brains and blood hang in the air as a fine mist. All his experience and opinions and feelings and flaws and talents and relationships hung there in the air in that fine red mist before falling over the bonnet and the white rose petals that littered it. Gunshot The gunshot sparked panic in the crowd. They surged forwards and backwards, trying to find a way out, but found only metal barriers in front of them and hard bodies behind them. There was a collective panic and a final frenzied push forwards. The barriers gave way. People everywhere stamping feet. The police let go of Andreas and attempted a futile line to hold the crowd back. They were almost instantly swallowed by the swarm. I saw Andreas lift Kitty to her feet and half carry her away into the crowd. She was kicking out at him, screaming for him to let her go back. I hesitated for a moment, watching the chaos unfurled about me. Not feeling part of it, then a lobbed bottle hit me on the side of the head, and I felt warm blood run down my ear. I helped you up. You looked so scared, so young, and there was a panic in your eyes that seemed primal. What do we do? You asked me, your voice hardly audible over the shouting and the sirens. I leapt up onto the bonnet to get a better view and looked into a battleground. All around us, protesters were clashing with police. At the end of the convoy, a tank with a water cannon was slowly turning into position. At the other end, a line of police officers parted to allow horses through, and they stampeded through the crowds, their riders flailing wildly around them with batons. Somewhere, someone let off smoke grenades, and the road filled with smoke that sounded deadening and compressing us. I jumped down from the car, pulled my jumper up over my mouth, and gestured for you to do the same. We need to go, I said. Where? Anywhere. This is only going to get worse.
It's not a comment on our real situation, I take it, but it kind of felt like that when I read that.
Andy said, "What does your carpet say about your work?" Well spotted, my friend. Well spotted. Go on, Henderson. 70s film reference. It's The Shining. It says that. I think it says, "I'm all work and no play makes Jamie a dull boy."
We've talked about COVID. I know today you were rotoring around the East Midlands in your very fine motor, doing signings and things and visiting bookshops. And I just wondered, from a practical point of view, what the effect of all of this has had on the normal publishing and marketing of a book. Has that been a bit of a strain for you in Sandstone?
I mean, it has been strange, hasn't it? But I think I'm luckier than some in that I was going to say at the end of the pandemic, but I don't know if we are actually at the end of it, are we? At the end of this phase of the pandemic, in that I could go out and sign some books, and books are physically in shops now, and people can order them. I remember do you remember when the zoo came out and we all sat in Waterston, like 50 of us, and drank champagne and then went to the pub?
Yeah, that's a really good night.
Actually, do you know what? The thought, to be honest, the thought of sitting downstairs in Waterstones in Leicester with like the low ceiling and lots of people makes me feel a little bit uneasy. Particularly being as a lot of my friends are young enough not to have had the vaccines yet. I don't want to be in a shared space with them.
I can just remember sitting there gently sweating, thinking, "Oh my God, what this is actually much more relaxed, isn't it? Sitting here, and it's a bit like the whole work thing, isn't it? Where you're kind of at home and you are working and stuff, but it's just a different vibe, isn't it?
I think it's just moved everything online, hasn't it? In terms of marketing, and to be fair, I think a lot of book marketing is going that way anyway. You know, Twitter and author platforms on the social channels are more important now than they ever were. So it could be worse. We're not selling live events, are we? We're selling things that are conducive to sitting around on your own and reading them.
Yeah, and that stuff's in demand, isn't it? So, what next for you? This, I have to say, I'm not just rubbing you up. This is a cracking book. Honestly, it's a if anybody hasn't read it, I'd urge him to read it. It's got a lot to say about a great many things, and said really, really, really wonderfully well, actually. But what's next for you?
So I am. So I've got my notes here buried underneath my daughter's drawings. But I want to discuss four things basically: performance, how men dominate. Power, how men dominate. Performance, how men dress and act the part. Violence, how men resort to crime and violence. And emotion, how men feel and why they don't show it. I think those are the four key things that we need to solve as the male half of the species to break the patriarchal model. So I want to exploring those 4 things in the context of, like I said, the rise of the right during the build up to Brexit, and how nationalism was allowed to damage that nationalism, and male nationalism actually was allowed to inflict sort of a huge piece of social shooting yourself in the foot, I think, and how toxic masculinity the cycle needs to be broken, and what we need to do it, basically. So that's where I'm going. Whether I manage to achieve all that, again, it's like, so I think the zoo dealt with consumerism and how the culpability of our consumer nature and the damage that inflicts on the world. Kings of Dead World is about culpability and the larger climate change that we're inflicting ourselves, and then I'm sort of narrowing down, I think, and talking again about culpability and responsibility, and how the effect that's had on sort of again, very British socio-economic situation. Or I could just write the sci-fi novel that I came up with yesterday. And I'm about 60,000 words through this one, so I'm nearly there with the first draft.
Well, you're pretty in there then.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Really am. Some heavyweight things you're taking on, but yeah.
Yeah, but again, I'm trying to do it from. So I brought football violence into it, and I like the idea of. I don't like giving too much away, but I like the idea of structure. So I've set it, as you know, in the Leicester City champion Premier League winning season, because that gives me a real. This happens on this week, and it's sort of there's a finite amount of time to tell a story, and yeah, I like that.
I like the way that you've gone for a bit of method writing. There you've got the haircut necessary for.
As you well know, this is not through choice. This is through biology, and
well, otherwise, as a man that has the same has the same affliction.
Pot glass houses. I don't know.
I sympathise. No, it'd be great to look forward to that, and yeah, I think that would be another cracking subject. Fight Club. That was the other thing that I started to think about, actually.
Yes. So there's I did an interview with Den of Geek about sleep in novels, and fight, and so Fight Club came up, and obviously J.G. Ballard came up, and what's it called? There was a short novel about people donating dreams. I don't know what it's called, but Fight Club. Fight Club is again. Fight Club is. I love Fight Club, and I love everything. Again, that's about that toxic male relationship, isn't it? And I don't want to spoil stuff, but does everyone know what the spoilers in Fight Club? Do you think?
I think people have seen Fight Club now. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So to fix the world, like, he isn't capable of going about it in a normal way. He invents an entire violent alter ego, and to force his hand to solve the problem, and it's done it solves the problem through sleep. And I do love that book.
Cracking film. Brad Pitt and Ed Norton, isn't it?
Ed Norton, yeah. And David Fincher directed it,
who's Helena Bonham Carter's the Magic Pixie Dream
Marlowe.
Girl. That's right. Yeah. Marla.
Marla.
You've got a Darla in your book, and I wondered if she'd popped up in there somewhere.
Oh, it could be that, couldn't it? That could be it. Yeah. I've just realised we've got some questions, Henderson. We've got 8 questions down the bottom. There's a little thing that says ask a question, and it's got 8.
Oh, I hadn't seen that. Oh, let's. All right. Okay. Let's get at these. Did becoming a dad change you as a writer?
God, yes. Yeah. Like, it changes everything, doesn't it? becoming a parent. Like, absolutely everything. Your whole world changes. I've actually it's a book for Arabella. It says, for Arabella, you're not going to be able to read this for quite a while, but when you do, I hope you like it. And I think thematically, some of this comes into this. I do have a worry that we're going to destroy the world before our kids get to enjoy it. So I think that's sort of played into into the story as I wrote it. It was just this fear that she would have nothing left by the time our generation had finished what they were doing.
Cool. Okay. The second one, I think we've answered. You've answered. Do you find all the ideas that have crossed into each other from book to book? I think we've talked about that. What was your favourite character to write as paperback Mo?
So I did like Ripley. I enjoyed writing Ripley a lot. I like Hassan actually, who's Ben's friend. Just because he was a very gentle character. He's a very gentle character in comparison to the others. But I really enjoyed writing Andreas just because he's, you know what, it's really difficult. Either Andreas or Slattery were my favourite because they're both wild and like one of the things. So I think Tony's on here, Tony Shea. I remember sitting with Tony in the coffee shop years ago, like probably 4 years ago, and I was like, so one of the things I wanted to explore during this book is what people are capable of if there's no checks and measures, like, and that's effectively what the junctures are. There's nobody telling what they can or can't do. So what are we actually capable of as humans if no one's going to tell us? Like, we've got a certain amount of self-regulation, but if there's only one person that you spend the time with and that person's telling you it's all right, like where do people go? So me and Tony sat in the coffee shop and sort of like riffed on what horrendous things people could do, and essentially Slattery is the result of trying to think about the worst things that things that human beings are capable of. So I won't say enjoy, but it's like, you know, when you can properly let yourself let all your darkest moments come out, and so he gave me the opportunity to do that.
It's funny, isn't it? Because Andreas was a terrible man, but he did terrible things, and there's a sort of ideology behind it.
Yeah.
So you kind of run with it, although it's awful what he does, and in some ways worse. But Slattery is just
sociopathic.
What the hell is that? So yeah.
I like to sort of play with like how much societal constraints stop us from being our worst selves, and so it was interesting if you took that away, what would we do to each other?
Yes, yeah, sure. Another interesting question. I think we've touched on this. Having love, human relationships at the heart of the book, do you feel that reflects the current world and humanity's role in it? Even in the darkest of times, we seem to see the best of people, and that's from Sam Fox, which is very lovely. What do you say?
I think it reflects my desire for that, but I like again, we sort of saw, you know, we had the clapping for the NHS, and we had the, you know, you go out for a walk and you see your neighbours and you say hello to people, and it was all lovely, and we all remembered what it's like to be human, and we missed all our families and everything. But now all we care about is getting back into Primark. So I think it would put in the relationship at the core of it, like that reflects my desire for humanity to be the good part of our world. But I don't think it does worry me that we're not.
Cool. Okay. It appears you spent a very long time crafting the world and characters that feature in your book. Are you planning to build on this in a subsequent novel? We've touched a bit on this, I guess.
So I wasn't at all. And then somebody mentioned today on Twitter launch, you know, and do you know what, I probably could. Like, I know the world well enough, and there's definitely stuff in there that I would like to explore. But you know, somebody makes into a film, then we'll talk about it.
Okay, one from Ben Marks here. This is an interesting one. It's a bit about structure. Hi, Jamie. With all the world building and lore, did you find it hard to get the balance right so the content does not impede the flow?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a question about gaming in some ways.
So I think yes, and that is the trick, isn't it? And that's the hardest bit about writing. You can spot dumped exposition a mile off. Like, you can read a book and just be like, "Oh, mate, you didn't need to tell me that. I'm not clever enough to work that out." And so it was. And I think that again, I had the advantage of this because I wrote so much of it. So I chopped like 100,000 words out of it before it got to the publishers, and then me and Kay are ready to chop more out of it. And it's like you fill it up with as much as you can, and then just prune the stuff away until it gets to the optimum point of that's told people enough. But you need to leave people space to work, to imagine the world, and to experience it themselves. And it is hard. I think that is probably one of the hardest things about writing is to get
it's a show. It's a show rather than tell.
It is the show we tell thing.
Element of it that we talk about quite a lot. Gotcha. This is a really interesting one. When you're writing, do you develop plot and character 100%? How do you want it to be? Or do you have to consider the commercial aspects of trying to hit the widest possible audience? Any pressure from anyone to go for the wide audience? That's from Simon Tate.
I am very lucky in that my publisher put no pressure on me for anything other than to write a good book. And surprisingly, considering what I do for a living, I'm not commercial at all in the way that I write. Although I think this one is probably more commercial than the Zoo. I think it's got more commercial appeal just because of the nature of it. But it's probably I just such a writer cliche. I just write what I want to write and write the book that I've got to write, and I really hope that people want to read it. But I want this to be a film as much as anyone else because I think it'll make a good film, which probably means it is more commercial. It probably is more commercial, but it certainly wasn't something that I set out to do. I set out to answer some questions that I was thinking about, and the same as I do with anything that I write.
Cool. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. That's been fun. How are you feeling about that?
I enjoy it. Should we just carry on? Like, just carry on so people get bored and walk off. We'll be like, it's been ages since we went to the pub. We could just treat this as going fun.
You've got a glass of wine there,
you didn't plan,
I think
did
it's
you?
a massive one as well, and I didn't think ahead. That's really, really bad, isn't it? Me trying to make out I'm a professional person, and I'm not. And it was a great oversight. So I'll just a cheers to your book, which is a very fine book indeed. There's a couple of things some other things in there which we might explore. I got slightly lost with one character, which I've been puzzling, and this is the Catherine Spencer character, or Kitty.
Yeah, could be careful now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. How do I say it? I guess there's a reference in there to royalty. Have I given anything away in there?
I don't think so.
Which I kind of I got lost with that character, and what do you just talk about her without giving anything away? Help me.
It's really difficult to talk about her without giving anything away. I don't even know how to word it. So I want her. She is almost representative of like this old English. I've just got to be so careful.
I know. Okay, she's very, very posh, right?
She's very posh and very eccentric and slumming it, and I think that's a very English thing. And also the ability of the aristocracy to sort of do like the slightly revolutionary a little bit, but actually be part of the problem, and that's kind of what she's supposed to be. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We can't really get at that without giving.
Can't get it at all, can we? No.
Yeah, but really interesting character, and I think she sort of did represent that sort of bourgeoisie siding with the proletariat for revolution type person, which is what I thought you were.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Yeah.
Is that where you're going with it? Okay, so I wasn't wrong then. So that which is just as well. But interesting, another interesting character I thought. Yes, so many, and how you hung on to them all and brought them together, I thought was really, really good. Quinn, he's an interesting geezer. Where did you get Quinn from? Just for people that haven't read it, there's a very manly man, if you want to put it like that. He's big, he's violent, he's very efficient at violence, he's really horrible. But is he? Where did you get him from?
So he's to me, he's like the epitome of he's doing what he's doing because he's been told to. Like, and that's, to me, that's a very bloke thing. It's like, why? So if you asked him why he was doing it, it would be because it's my job. Like, someone told me to do it. But he hasn't thought about it any more than that. Like, he's just like an automaton.
So that is a little bit. I mean, because there is a sort of authoritarian fascism thing going on in the book, as we alluded to earlier. And he is akin to the "why did you do that to those Jewish people?"
Because someone told me to.
Because I was told, and I'm a soldier, and that's my job.
That's exactly what he is. Yeah, and again, I can't go too far into him, but I enjoyed playing with him because he was. You got Andreas, who's doing what he's doing which is bad, but from a supposedly moral standpoint, and you've got Quinn, who's doing what he's doing, which is bad, but with no moral at all. It's just I'm doing what I'm told. So they are absolutely diametrically opposed in why they're doing things, but the result is pretty similar. I just think it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like that thing where you come from the very far right or you come from the very far left, and you kind of. It's indistinguishable in the end.
Throw stuff at each other and burn things and loot, even though you're completely ideologically different. And and that's I like they kind of bookend each other.
Yeah. I got that. I thought that was really, really interesting. Those two characters and the way they interacted didn't interact was quite interesting as well.
I also kind of like it's a 70s film thing again, isn't it? Like the nemesis that's after you. It's just like. It's such a lovely trope, like the idea of a nemesis.
Yeah, I love a nemesis. Is you got to have a nemesis, isn't it? It's that bit of kryptonite that's gonna human kryptonite, which is going to do somebody in, and you at last, Moriarty and Sherlock Holmes, and having a big fight on a bridge, and there can only be one. All that stuff is. I think you love all that, and there was I think with the denouement, there is a that heading towards that confrontation and the violence of it all, which takes you into that adventure movie.
I think it was really important. Like all the way through, I was aware that I'm dealing with big topics and important topics that I think need to be discussed, but I so did not want it to be a polemic, like in any way. I didn't want it to be preachy at all. I wanted people to sort of get washed along with it, and if they think about it and the things that I talk about it, then that's a pleasant byproduct. But the main driver is to write something that's like a rollicking good read. I want people to be rushed to storm through it.
Indeed. Okay, mate. I think people are starting to wonder. I ought to say, if you haven't got this, do go and get it, because it's a brilliant book and well worth it. And all good bookshops, Jamie?
Yeah, I think you can. There's a button down there that says buy the book, but that takes you to Sandstone's website. But if you're not going to do that, being as we're not locked down at the moment, and there are bookshops. Take a wander to town and buy it in person from a proper bookseller, and support the high street before it all goes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, mate. Really enjoyed
that. Always fun talking to you. I think we need to get a beer done, haven't we? But the pubs are open. We'll have to sort that out soon, or a curry night or something.
Oh, shall we?
Yeah, it's about time. Thank you, Ali Moore. Thank you for that. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, all of you out there, for coming along and listening to Jamie. And most of all, thank you, Jamie, for a wicked book.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to get me dinner.
Thank you, Henderson.
Cheers, mate. No worries. Oh, Eve Mackies. Hi, Eve. Thank you. Oh, some nice comments. Thank you.
Is Kerry still there? Do we just stop?